It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped, I believe, yesterday morning, 6 a.m. And it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. June 1st in the NFL is a big day. We'll tell you why. Andrew DiCecco is here to discuss some Eagles, some NFL, as June 1st is a big day in the NFL because a lot of cap space is now available. You'll see some roster moves, and you could see another wave of signings and some trades now go down. What does that mean for guys like Zach Ertz, Julio Jones, and more, as we bring Andrew DiCecco in for today's edition of Football at 4 on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. What's going on, Andrew?
Hey, Mike, doing well. How are you?
All right, man. How was your Memorial Day weekend?
Oh, yeah, like I was telling Josh, it was all right. It was pretty enjoyable, but, I mean, it's typical weather, Northeast weather for this time of year was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is.
Yeah, a lot of rain, a lot of arc. I got a boat, a big old arc sitting in my backyard, it feels like still. It was just kind of rainy and crappy out there. But it was nice to get a couple days away. But now we're right back into it. And June 1st in the NFL is kind of a big day for the people out there. And it's a day that the Eagles might have some impact because they had some guys post June 1st, Alshon Jeffrey, Malik Jackson. So some contract salaries are now off the book. So, Andrew, this might be the time where we start to see some things heat up in the trade market.
Yeah, well, in regards to Malik Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey, the Eagles get $4 million, $2 million apiece for that. They had those the June 1 designations when they were released in March, and then Zach Ertz becomes in play here. I mean, if the Eagles do release him now, they're going to get $8.5 million in savings. So I mean, that's an area that's going to be plausible here. Now we've reached the 4 o'clock line. So, I mean, that's something to look for. I still think the Eagles are going to actively look to trade Zach Ertz. I don't think they just want to simply part with him. I think they realize the value that he still has. But ultimately, if there's no taker, I mean, when you're looking at what they could save, I think that makes, sense, given the sort of disconnect between Zach Ertz and the Eagles. So.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, there was a report a little bit earlier from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN that said talks on a potential Zach Ertz trade have been ongoing for quite some time, but fairly quiet of late. At least 3 tight end needy teams have looked into this. The Eagles have made it clear they won't part for nothing in return, making a release unlikely. Things could pick up this week. Now, I mean, do you still think that Ertz is gone before the season starts?
Yeah, I do. I mean, barring something unforeseen, like he shows up to the facility, but I just, and they're able to kind of mend those fences. But as of right now, Mike, I don't really see that happening. I do know that the Eagles realize the value that Zach Ertz has, and that's why they've set that. They have a high asking price because he can still play at a high level, and he can really be an integral part to another team's. I mean, look at the Arizona Cardinals. They could really help a team like the Carolina Panthers, the Chargers. There's a lot of teams that he would step right in and immediately lift that offense. And the Eagles realize that. He still has, a number of good years left, so they don't just want to cut him loose. They want to get something in return for sure.
Right. Now, Andrew, trading or cutting Zach Ertz would save them $8.5 million with $4.2 million in dead money, as opposed to just under $5 million in savings against $7.8 million in dead money. So they can, cut Zach Ertz now and get a little relief, and then I guess they could be a player in the trade market for a guy like Julio Jones. I mean, is that something that you think the team would explore? There has been some reports that they have made calls to the Falcons.
Well, you have to remember that with the $4 million from Malik Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and the $8.5 million that they would get from cutting Zach Ertz, I would have to think at least $4 million of that is going to have to go to signing the draft picks. And I don't know. And then, so you're going to have a little bit of wiggle room. I still don't think that they're going to have enough to, kind of reel in Julio Jones, though.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk about this last week and we kind of figured, all right, well, the Eagles are already involved. Well, then there was a report over the weekend that said, no, it's confirmed that they have made calls here. And, I mean, are you giving up a first-round pick to get a 32-year-old Julio Jones? I mean, getting him in to work with Devonta Smith, there's enough value there to say, you know what, it's valuable enough to have him around our wide receivers.
Well, I think when you're talking about one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, the Eagles, like every other team in the NFL, has to do their due diligence and call and ask around and to put some numbers out there. Do I think that they'd be willing to, fork over a first-round pick for a 32-year-old wide receiver? Maybe not, but I mean, they might be able to work something out with like a player and another high draft pick or something like that, but. I don't know. I mean, they definitely need a veteran wide receiver, but it all depends on how close the Eagles really believe that they are to contending for being one of the better teams in the NFL, right? I mean, how much do they believe in Jalen Hurts? How much do they believe in their defense and things like that? Because otherwise, that's a pretty big ask to fork over a first round pick for a 32-year-old wide receiver if you don't really believe that you're going to contend this year.
I guess, Andrew, the message, if they did something like that, is we think we can contend, right? I mean, isn't that the message that you're basically portraying if you make a trade for Julio Jones?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the only reason why you do that is if you believe you're going to be one of those top teams at the end there, and you have faith in the way the roster is built and the coaches that are in place. I mean, that would be certainly an aggressive move on the Eagles' part, but I mean. That would speak to how confident they are in the way that the team's currently constructed.
Right. And then, of course, you go back to the Ertz stuff and talk about all the stuff going on in Buffalo where they've cleared out a bunch of cap space. I mean, it seems that teams right now are making that second big wave of moves to try to get ready for this season where you saw the Bills restructure the contract of Stephon Diggs. Is that a team that would make sense?
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills would be right at the top of the list for me. Like I said, the Arizona Cardinals, I think, the Panthers, the Chargers, even though they got Jared Cook. I think that adding those two tight ends to go with Justin Herbert and some of the pieces that they have on offense would be a really just an explosive offense. There's a lot of teams that I think make a lot of sense for Zach Ertz, and more teams are kind of adopting that two tight end set formation. So, and you get in Zach Ertz, who I believe still has a number of good years left in him. I mean, there should be teams lining up to get him in.
Yep, and I know that like Dallas Goedert would be the leftover. Obviously, and I say leftover. That's not really fair. I mean, do you think Dallas Goedert? I don't know. Is he step right in, and is he as productive as what Zach Ertz was? I mean, that's a hard ask.
Yeah, you're right. It is a tough ask, but I think when you look at what Dallas Goedert brings from a skill set perspective, he has. I mean, he's more athletic. He's bigger. He's physical. He's a better blocker. But there's an injury concern with him, Mike, and that's something that I think can't be undersold when you're looking at this because look what's behind him. I do think that if you go with Dallas Goedert, and there is no Zach Ertz left in the picture, you have to go the free agent route and look at a Trey Burton, look at a Richard Rodgers, and get a veteran backup in there because the history is there. And the way that Dallas Goedert plays the game, he's a very physical player. I mean, you have to protect your asset, and you have to get a veteran in there that can step in if need be for a game or two.
Yeah, I know that Goddard had that big game one last year, the first game of the year against Washington, and then he got himself hurt, and then Ertz got hurt, and I don't feel like those two guys were ever really, themselves last year. But I'm interested to see what Goddard is as the number one tight end here. The problem would be behind them. They don't have a whole heck of a lot behind Goddard at this point.
Yeah, and then like I was saying, I mean, if you do go with Dallas Goedert, they need to use a little bit of that money that they're going to have to bring in a veteran like a Richard Rodgers who knows the system. He's played relatively well when they called this number. I mean, I think that regardless, you got to bring him in for a training camp and let him compete for either the second or third spot. Anyway, even if Zach Ertz is around, I think you should still bring him in. But I mean, you definitely have to have a contingency plan in the event that Dallas Goedert missed a game or two, because the history, like I said, is there.
Yeah, you mentioned Rodgers. He has not signed here, correct? He's not signed with anybody, though, right?
He's still out there, yeah.
Right. So you wonder if they got a little, hey, if once we do something with Ertz, hang in there, we'll get there, or something like that, because as you just kind of mentioned, that room is not overflowing with a lot of tight end options in there. But we'll see. I think this Ertz thing, I don't know. I mean, could something happen this week? Well, we'll find out. I mean, this is if there was something to happen, you would think it would be something around this week, with now all the teams kind of reshuffling the deck here.
Yeah. I mean, this week would be what I would look for. I mean, you're going to see a lot of roster shuffling going on in the coming days, so that's something to keep an eye on. Then things become interesting should it linger into the next week.
Absolutely. Now, is there any part of you that would say, just keep him? I mean, see what this offense looks like with Zach Ertz back here.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Eagles, I'm keeping Zach Ertz. You have two tight ends that complement each other extremely well. There's a comfort level there with Zach Ertz has had with quarterbacks. I think he'd be a perfect match with Jalen Hurts, who's looking for that safety blanket as a young quarterback. And like I said, there's the injury history there at Dallas Goedert. I mean, while Dallas Goedert's a more explosive player, can give you more after the catch and be a bigger presence in the red zone and so on. I mean, availability is always going to be a concern. So I think before you turn the page, you need to make sure that you can't just give the guy away. I mean, like I said, he can still be productive.
Yeah, that's the hard part. You know this business, man. You get a guy 30, no matter what you did in the past, they said they don't want to just give him away for nothing. What's the lowest you go? Do you take a fifth rounder? I mean, do you hold out?
No, I think a fifth rounder is, not even worth their time.
Interesting. All right. You think they're getting I would imagine they're not getting offers better than that, because they probably would have done something by now, no?
Yeah, I mean, I would fourth rounder, yeah, but I mean, a fifth rounder, I mean, for a player that's going to be an instant producer for their offense and be that security blanket for their quarterback. I mean, a fifth rounder, that's nothing. That's a day 3 pick. That's a fringe roster player on many teams.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. I guess the last kind of thing to kind of look over here is, now that the calendar has turned June 1st, do we anticipate them getting into play for a corner and fixing that other corner spot?
Oh, absolutely. You have to. And, Kevon Seymour and Graylin Arnold and Avonte Maddox and Craig James, those guys aren't necessarily guys you want to trot out there for 17 games, a full slate of games as starters. I mean, Zach McPherson is a rookie who they have high hopes for, but again, corner is not like the transition to playing corner at the pro level isn't what it's going to be like playing defensive line for Milton Williams. It's a steeper learning curve, so you don't want to just throw somebody out there and overload them right out of the gate just because there's not a lot of talent there. You know what I mean? I think they need to get a veteran corner in there or an experienced corner that's played a lot of football that has a little bit of upside to complement Darius Slay, because the guys that are there right now are 5s and 4s and 5s, and some of them are even 6. They're practice squad guys. So I think we need to upgrade that. And I think they will. It just might take a little bit of time, possibly here, in the middle of the summer, end of the summer, kind of like what you saw when they got Ronald Darby in 2017.
Yep. Real quick, speaking of upgrade, would you call Anthony Harris an upgrade over the safety position last year?
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, is he going to be able to cover some of these more explosive tight ends? No, but I think he gives you a better coverage. He's good run defender. He's a smart player, very technically savvy, and him working in unison with Rodney McLeod, I think, is going to be a vast upgrade over what they had last season. I think he's just a better overall football player than Jalen Mills. I thought Jalen Mills didn't do as bad as what many would lead you to believe last year, but I do think Anthony Harris, we've seen, I think he has better ball skills and things of that nature and more range. So, I mean, I like what they did there. I don't know. Both of those guys, Rodney and Anthony Harris, they're not going to cover a ton of ground. I don't know if they run particularly well, but I mean, you get a couple of veterans there in the middle of the defense kind of patrolling back there. I think that's going to be a good, a good match for Jonathan Gannon back there.
Yeah, it's the Mills thing was interesting because he obviously played safety last year for the first time. They used him at corner at times, but I'm really intrigued, Andrew, at what Anthony Harris that you end up getting, because I think a lot of that position, and you could speak to this, is tied to your front four and what kind of pressure they get. I think that translates a lot into how good that particular position ends up playing on Sundays.
Right, and they're not asked to do more than they have to. They don't get quite exploited like you saw last season and seasons before. And I think if the pass rush is there and they're able to get home, well, we've seen Anthony Harris be able to take the football away when the Vikings pass rush was on point. And I think that now, given what the Eagles have to work with, there's reason to believe that he can be that player again. Obviously, he had a down year last year, but I think that we've seen what he's able to do when the pass rush is on, the skill set that he has. So there's reason for intrigue there, of course. And I think that could end up being one of the better value signings in free agency.
Real quick, Andrew, the Eagles promoted Catherine Ricci to the Vice President of Football Operations. And I've been asked a lot, who is she? What is her role? I know, scouting and the draft is stuff that you are heavily involved into watching. Here's somebody who came from, the Canadian Football League. I think she was in the XFL for a little bit. But at 32 years old, this is a pretty quick rise for her through an NFL organization.
Yeah, it is, and it's great. It was a great hire, I thought, and it's nice to see. Obviously, if she's moving that fast through the organization, she has a skill set there that's very intriguing, and they wanted to make sure that she was. They promoted her before. Other teams are going to start to take notice of that as well. So I thought that was very interesting, and it was great to see.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football 4. For more on the Eagles and the NFL, we will have you covered. We'll start to take a look. Of course, it's going to be 100 days before the NFL season kicks off. We are at the 100-day mark, so it is fast approaching. We will be getting into training camps very shortly here. We'll have plenty of off-season coverage for you. And, of course, check out the Inside the Birds podcast. Mondays and Thursdays is when you can check that out at 6 a.m. with Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, and for more from Andrew DiCecco over at InsideTheBirds.com. All right, Andrew, good stuff, man.
All right, man, take care.